Hello, folks. Shady Wessel back here with another Wildcat breakdown. This week we are doing a little March Madness preview of the Final Four. Obviously, the four teams we have: Loyola Chicago, Michigan, Villanova, and last but not least, the Kansas Jayhawks, a team that was in Omaha, Nebraska for the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16, I suppose. I'm joined here by Jaden Cover and Andrew Pfeiffer. How you boys doing this fine Friday?
Doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
That's good to hear. So just jumping right into it, what are your guys' thoughts on this year's bracket and kind of what's unfolded here going into the Final Four?
I think it was a pretty fair turnout. I'm only saying that because my bracket right now is at 98%. I mean, I'll show y'all right now. Come up to me and I'll prove it. But there was a lot more upsets than I predicted, which normally happens in March Madness. It happens, and I think it's a surprise to everyone, especially seeing Loyola Chicago still hanging in the Final Four, an 11 seed that no one thought was going to show out. But I'm pretty surprised at the results so far. And Jaden, you got any thoughts?
Well, my bracket's in the trash right now, and people say not many people expected Loyola Chicago to show out, but I disagree with that. I'd say they were the most favored upset pick, at least in the first round. They were everyone's kind of little. I don't know what it was about them. Like, I didn't do any research on them, but I just had a gut feeling, okay, they're going to beat Miami. And I remember kind of watching that game while I was in the weight room, and it was crazy. I mean, at some point I'm like, oh no, Miami's going to win this. Loyola.
We get it, by the way, Jaden.
Yeah.
You left. Okay.
Okay. Loyola pulled it out, and then they've been on a tear since then, and their first game was their closest.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I wouldn't even they won the first three games by a combined 4 points, and it's a team that you always have those March Madness Cinderella stories, and this is definitely one of those teams. And the thing about that Loyola Chicago team is you look top to bottom on their roster, they don't have one NBA type player, really. I mean, these are just a bunch of college guys going out there playing the game they know how to play.
Playing for their hometown.
Yeah, really. I mean, Sister Jean, for God's sake, is at every game just cheering them on. I mean, she's definitely been like the Twitter meme of 2018 at this point in the March Madness bracket. And so, yeah, Loyola Chicago, just very interesting team to see, but nothing new, really. I mean, last year we saw the 7th seed South Carolina make it to the Final Four, and obviously their run ended prematurely in the Final Four matchup. I'm not sure who was against.
Gonzaga, right?
Gonzaga, yeah, maybe. And yeah, I mean, they had a great season, but that's where it came to end. And I think for Loyola, they might be seeing the same fate this coming weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I wasn't expecting anything different. I mean, it's great to take a win over Miami, which was a 6th seed, and then going on and beating Tennessee, who was a 3 seed. And then Nevada, not really a team that stood out this year, but at the same time, they were still there. They were well-deserved to be there. And it was a close-fought game, and they pulled, but most of these games they pulled away by, like you said, 2 or 3 points in the end. But does this team have the skill, now that they're in the Final Four, they actually have a tough test against Michigan, which was a top 10 team, like that I think they clinched the Big Ten, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they're going to have a real competitor, not taking anything away from them. I think they've played pretty tough competition before, but going up against this Michigan team, it'll be a true test to prove whether they actually are a quality team or whether it's just a fluke, whether they're there or not.
And that's where I think I differ with you, Andrew. I think, once you get to the Final Four, all the previous records, all the stats and metrics, I mean, it's so much different than a regular season game. A regular season game, we can sit here and argue, I don't think this team has the talent, but obviously they do have the talent. They made it to the Final Four. They beat teams they shouldn't have beaten. They got Sister Jean on their side, and so they've got a lot of things going for them right now. And I don't think there's a fan in America. Like, I got Villanova winning my bracket.
Well, I mean, everybody loves an underdog, especially, they're sitting at 30. They're sitting at 32-5, and they have a.
Well, yeah, so they're a good team.
But going into it by ESPN analyzers here, I'm looking at it right now. They only
Yeah,
have
don't ever trust ESPN.
Well, it says they have a 26.4% chance of winning, which I'm not. You don't want to bank off those too much, but these guys are professionals and do have some insight. But it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Like you said, it's Final Four, anything can happen.
This is the way I look at it. Once you get to the Final Four, it's 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
It's a one game. It's not like it's seven. If it's a 7-game series, Michigan wins it in 5 or 6. But it's a one game series, one game to decide who wins it. I think it can go. It's a toss up. But I think if you're a fan in America right now, why you not root for Loyola? I mean,
I'd love for Loyola.
I have
to win.
Villanova winning my bracket, but if those two face off in the national title, I'm going to be rooting for Loyola. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. I mean, everything about them, just the spirit of, a bunch of college kids who know that this is the end of their run. Like, this is probably the greatest thing they're ever going to be a part of. That's just magical.
Well, I mean, absolutely, and especially since I'm gonna be honest, that even if they lose, say they lose against Michigan, they didn't have a bad season, and it's not from the winning aspect of it. It's in the name of their basketball program and in the name of like their school. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know what Loyola Chicago was. I was kind of looking at the Sweet 16, like, okay, these are kind of the fluke teams that shouldn't be there, and I've kind of never heard of before. It's kind of like Coastal Carolina winning the College World Series. It's like, okay, I've never really heard of this school before, and now they're coming up and making, making big moves.
And every kid's wearing a Coastal Carolina shirt.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just going to do the same thing for this school. They're going to get a rep. Everyone's going to know who they are now. I mean, nothing but good things is going to come out of this for this team. So it's not like if they lose, their season was a total disappointment. Definitely made Sister Jean happy.
We've seen how it's put other schools on the map. You got George Mason in 06, Florida Gulf Coast a few years ago. I mean, this is a great thing for their school. And now, kind of with Michigan, if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, Michigan making it this far is the best thing you could have hoped for. Because Nebraska beat Michigan at home earlier in the season, and they beat them convincingly by 20 points. Let's say Michigan goes on to win a national title. Forget what happened in the Big Ten tournament, but Nebraska beat a national championship team. That's something that the Huskers can hang their hats on, and going into next season can be, especially when it comes down to bracketology and when they're deciding who makes the tournament and who doesn't, they can look at it. Hey, Nebraska has beat the best.
And you mind if we go back on that topic of Nebraska basketball just real quick, JD?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Mother, you can.
Well, I mean, it won't take long, but one thing I think happened in Nebraska is not only do I think they should have been in the tournament over Oklahoma or Texas, is when you kind of go back and look at the NIT tournament where they lost to Maryland, I just kind of think their team
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, my bad. I don't know why I thought Maryland, but yeah, thank you. But when you're a team that was on a come up as big as Nebraska's, I mean, they were pretty inconsistent, not gonna lie, but they held a better record and kind of held their own better than most teams, especially Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's just where's the motivation at after?
Exactly. When you don't get into the big dance, their motivation, they weren't playing with the same kind of play style they've been playing with all year because they worked so hard and then just got disappointed. And I think that was kind of what took away from the Mississippi State game. And once they lost, everyone, like all the analyzers, were like, "Well, this is what was going to happen. It was a good call. It was well deserved." But I mean, you don't know that. These kids were looking to have it all, and it was just obviously very disappointing.
I like to compare it to, let's say, when Oklahoma lost to, who do they lose? Or when Oklahoma lost to Georgia and Clemson lost to Alabama in football, Nebraska playing that game was equivalent if Oklahoma, Clemson, do you guys want to play for third place? No one wants to play for third place. Third place is awful. No one wants to. Once you can't win it all, in my opinion, there's no point in playing.
That's a very similar experience. I mean, kind of branching off on a totally different subject. Like when I used to wrestle, if you win that or if you lose that, say you make it, you win a couple matches, then you lose one, and you're not to the finals, but you're wrestling consolation. You don't compete the same, because if you're not going to go for it all, then it's just a different mindset. I mean, you still play hard. This goes for all sports. You still play hard. It's just it's not there as much, and I think that's what happened in Nebraska.
Yeah.
Just to bring you guys back into the Final Four talk. I think when you guys talk about Loyola Chicago, you're thinking, yeah, this team they've done their part, they've done their job, they won the games they need to win. But looking at their bracket, I think their trip to the Final Four has been probably close to one of the easiest
Mm-hmm.
out of not only every Final Four team, I'd say even Elite Eight team. There was a lot of upsets on the side of this bracket, and with that,
Well, UMBC helped them out
yeah,
tremendously.
I mean, you just got to look and you got to consider matchups. If Loyola Chicago were to go against a Arizona team who has a dominant inside core, or a young Kentucky team, but a Kentucky team that can score a lot of points, and a Virginia team who has only lost now 3 or 4 games this season, I think you got to look at matchups here. Loyola Chicago, I honestly don't know if they're going to be able to contend against Michigan. I think Michigan is, if I were to have to say, I think Michigan's probably going to blow them out of the water in this game. And what I could see happening is Michigan coming into this game, whipping them around for about 20 points, and then they're going to look good going into the national championship game. And then that's just, where a lot of people just start assuming Michigan's going to be the national champ, beating Loyola. But I don't know. I think Michigan's a lock for that Final Four game. Obviously, it's March Madness, but looking at Loyola Chicago, they beat a weak Miami team who had their starting shooting guard for the whole season just come out the last week around the ACC championship game or ACC tournament game.
There's not much you can do from that point, especially when you've been injured all season.
Yeah, for sure. And then they beat a Tennessee team who, some could argue the SEC was a good conference, but they didn't have a single team in the Elite Eight. And I mean, just looking at it, I think the SEC they just get so much credit for having Kentucky, a team who's been on top of the mountain for so many years. Now Kentucky's not as good, and yet they're still winning the SEC. I don't know if that's really proving that the SEC is a good conference, but the SEC was a conference who had a lot of teams in the tournament, a lot of teams in the field, yet they failed to get at least one team into the Elite Eight, which kind of shows maybe they were a little overrated. And then going against Nevada, a team that I believe is in the MAC, maybe the Mountain West, I believe. And, just off of that, you can't really make any assumptions about Nevada. I mean, don't get me wrong, they made a good run to the Sweet 16, but, that might have just been a good matchup for Loyola. I think Loyola has really just seen a lot of good matchups. They also played K-State in the Big 12. K-State, going against a young Kentucky team, and obviously UMBC. So, yeah, I think on that side of the bracket, it's going to be real interesting to see this Michigan-Loyola Chicago game. But I honestly think Michigan is going to be walking away the winner. What do you guys think? Quick reaction on the game.
The over Loyola Chicago and Michigan we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I'd just kind of looking at it, I'd like to say the same thing. I mean, Michigan going out over Loyola Chicago. I just don't think that they have that edge to be the top team like Michigan. And I think Michigan will, like you said, they'll go up by 20 points, and then they'll just kind of the game will end, and then it'll be a pretty large margin. So that's where I'm going. That's my prediction, Jaden. You
I'm
better
gonna go
not
with
pull
Loyola.
for Loyola.
I am
Oh my
going for.
goodness.
I think this is. Hey, listen to me. Yeah, they shouldn't win this game. If these teams would have been matched up in the round of 32 or in the first round, Michigan all the way. But I just think this team is so hyped up on confidence, and just their confidence level is so high that they're dumb enough to believe they can do it. And when you give a team confidence, I've been on good teams that have sputtered come playoff time, and I've been on bad teams that have excelled during playoff time. It's amazing what a couple wins under your belt can do to your performance. They are a better team than they were when they played Miami. I guarantee you, just because they're dumb enough to believe they can win the whole thing right now.
But if you're dumb enough to believe you can win the whole thing, that's also where if you can take a step back and maybe, let's say, quote unquote, get smart about it, that's where a lot of teams can choke, especially.
Why is it time to get smart about it, though? They're in the Final Four.
Boys. Here's where I'm going to stop both of you. bickering about that. You got to look at just pure talent, and Michigan is pure talent. They show up for the tournament. You can't count them out. This Michigan team was a team that was an average Big Ten team. The Big Ten is not that good of a conference. They only have 2 top teams above them, and that was, at the time, Purdue and Michigan State. And, for Michigan, this team comes around tournament time every single year. It doesn't matter how good they are, and now Michigan is in the Final Four. Nobody talked about them during the season until they won the Big Ten, and now they're here, and just because Loyola is in the Final Four, you want me to believe that Michigan isn't one of the best teams in the nation after winning 15 straight.
This is the thing. Michigan is a better team than Loyola. And the better team wins when it comes down to a series. If it came down to a series, Michigan wins. Why do you think it's always Cleveland and Golden State? Those are the better teams. But when you have a one game, it's not about who's the better team, it's who has the better game. And I think Loyola has the potential to pull out the better game because they don't have to face a pissed off Michigan team the next day if they pull it out. They've just got to beat them once.
And I think that's where you're wrong again, though. You got to consider the fact that Michigan has been here before. This is nothing new for them. They have a storied past. Coming back to the Final Four is nothing new for this Michigan team. They're a tournament team, and they definitely play a tight defense. And although they struggle on offense, Loyola Chicago doesn't put much points up either. So I think Michigan, they're just going to overmatch them shooting. If Michigan can get hot shooting, I mean, you could say Loyola Chicago might get hot shooting, but I mean, Michigan, their defense is locked down. They play in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is known for defense. So I think Michigan is definitely going to pull away in this one.
I mean, I definitely agree with what you said, Jade. If it was a series, I think Michigan would win out, but you're going into it looking already that Michigan could already be a pissed off team. I mean, people looking at Loyola Chicago like, wow, I don't think they should even be here. Other teams are going to go up against it like, we're going to end this team's run and we're going to end it now because this team's definitely taken a lot of game away from a lot of other seniors, who have graduated from these colleges now and are either going on to play at the next level or are just done with basketball in general. And if Michigan sees that, they're like, okay, we're not going to let this team who's an 11 seed come in and take us. So they might already be pissed off. So it's just the mindset going into the game. Like you said, it is a toss-up. So, I mean, definitely an interesting game for sure. And
Hold on, boys. We got to move to the next side of the bracket.
Guys, my last final thought is, it's amazing what a little bit of hope can do to your team, and just knowing that, it's something about the run they're on. I just think that it could feed into the Final Four.
Alrighty. So we're going to finally head over to the East and Midwest side of the bracket. This one, there wasn't too many upsets, to be honest. I mean, we saw most top seeds win. I mean, we saw the occasional Marshall, Butler, 2 teams that you can just ring off there that made it past the first round. But, I mean, Syracuse is definitely the big upset. Not only beating TCU, but also beating Michigan State to move into the Midwest semifinal against the Duke Blue Devils in Omaha, Nebraska, of course. And so, just going into this bracket, taking a look quickly, I think Villanova I wouldn't say they're a lock, but, Villanova has definitely proved they are the top team in the nation. They have not had a single close March Madness game this year. They beat Radford by nearly 20 points, turned around, played Alabama, beat them by 30, and then played West Virginia, played them a close 12-point game. And I mean, that was a competitive one. And a lot of people actually had West Virginia beating Villanova, just trying to get that upset pick. But Villanova took care of business, and also Texas Tech, they just couldn't match up with Villanova. This Villanova team has got shooters all around the court. Jalen Brunson leads the pack for these guys. This Villanova team, if you watch them play in person, which, seeing them play at Creighton, as they do nearly every year, it really puts in perspective how good this team is at shooting. And, even though Creighton beat them late in the season, you could still tell Villanova was going to be one of those top teams. And that's why it was a no-brainer for me to pick Villanova to win this whole thing. And I honestly think they're going to move past Kansas. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if that one might get a little lopsided late in the game. Villanova is a team that can put up a lot of points and do it quickly. Villanova averages around 87 a game, and when their shooters are on, these guys could score 100 on any given team. And that's honestly just my opinion.
It's
Also,
a bold statement.
I mean, Villanova, you got to watch them on TV. You got to watch them. I mean, looking on paper doesn't even solve justice. This team they're the real deal, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they ran through this Final Four.
Definitely the train on rails at the moment. I agree. I had them in a lot of my brackets that I filled out already this year. I had them winning it all.
How many brackets did you fill out?
Well, I filled out about 5 or 6, and I had Nova winning about 3 or 4 of them. I mean, it hasn't disappointed me yet, but I agree. I think they're gonna make it past Kansas. I mean, Kansas, they deserve to be in the Final Four, but like you said, JD, I just think Villanova has the shooters, and their offense is gonna show out and easily dominate over Kansas's defense, and I think they'll come out with the win. And then the finals, it's a toss-up. I'd like to see Villanova play Michigan because I think that'd be a quality game. It's like kind of going back on what Jaden said. Either game could be a toss-up. You never know what could happen. You could have the big scary team just fall all of a sudden, and then now you're kind of left with wow, like this turned out a lot differently than we expected. But that's how March Madness always is.
No,
sure.
and I think.
I had North Carolina winning it in 2 of my brackets.
Oh, and I had them in the finals.
Yeah, look what happened to them.
So I have Villanova winning it all, and I want to say at least, I think all my brackets I had Villanova winning it all. I didn't fill out that many, but I think if you're Bill Self now and you're coaching the Jayhawks, you've got to keep it close in the first half. If they pull away, if Villanova gets ahead by 10 in the first half at any point, I think it's over. I think the Jayhawks have to keep it close in order for the game to be in contention at the end. But I think Villanova, I had them winning it all at the beginning, so I'm going to have them going to the championship game. I've never believed in Kansas come tournament time. I think they have a history of just fluttering out when or just losing in the Sweet 16, losing in the Elite 8. I was actually surprised they made it to the Final Four, as I think a lot of people were, as many of the experts didn't have them going so that far. They're always kind of that one seed where you sit back and you think, I'm not sure. So I just think Villanova will win this game.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas has definitely been a team to, given they're a 1 seed, seeing Virginia lose round 1 this season has kind of shown that, the 1 seeds were pretty weak. But, every season there's a 1 seed that gets upsetted. And, honestly, I don't even know if we've ever seen a 1 seed in each 4 of the sides of the bracket. I really don't think so.
There were 3 out of the 4, and that was, like, the first time that ever happened.
Yeah, and so, seeing Kansas be in it's surprising nonetheless. Kansas was one of the teams that were projected to be, on the bubble for 1 seed upsets, kind of a team that you could see being upsetted. But, Kansas they've done their part, and I think Devontae Graham is a very good leader, and him and Jalen Brunson's battle here coming up this weekend is going to be real good to see. Those 2 guys are pure grinders, pure competitors, and honestly, I'm going to have to give it to Jalen Brunson, just, being a little more experienced, playing on that Villanova team, playing against a strong Big East conference. Don't take anything away from the Big 12. But, the Big East, they have a lot of shooters. They can score a lot of points. And, if Villanova can get their defense rolling against Kansas, maybe get a couple stops, that's when they get hot. The Big East is known for kind of going off their momentum when they can get a defensive stop to score more offense. This Big East conference is a conference that purely relies on scoring, not much defense. But if Villanova can get stops against Kansas, which Kansas really likes the momentum, then I could see Villanova really pulling away in this one. But then again, it is March Madness. Again, we can see anything. So give your final 2 teams in the bracket. and who the champion will be.
I got Villanova and Michigan. I got Villanova coming out on top.
Got Villanova and Loyola, and I want one thing, but I think Villanova's gonna ruin my dreams.
And I also have Villanova and Michigan, and I have Villanova winning big. I really like Villanova this season, and I think they're going to maybe have a good ending to the season. Folks, this has been JD Wessel
Andrew Pfeiffer.
And Jaden Cover.
with the Wildcat Breakdown. We'll catch you guys sometime next week. Take it easy.